When we talk about the transformation that God's love brings, we have to start with the reality that His love doesn't just rearrange your circumstances, it changes the core of who you are. God is far more interested in shaping your identity than He is in simply adjusting your environment. When His love touches you, it begins by redefining you from the inside. You may have been called broken, unworthy, not enough, or too far gone, by the world, by people, or even by the voice in your own mind. But when the love of God encounters your life, those labels begin to lose their grip. He calls you chosen, redeemed, beloved, and child of God, and that identity begins to override every other voice that tried to define you. The transformation of your identity is the foundation for every other change that will come. Without a new understanding of who you are in Him, even if He gave you a new opportunity, a new season, or a new blessing, you would not have the capacity to hold it because your mindset would still be trapped in the old you. When you come into the revelation that God's love has rewritten your identity, something deep inside begins to shift. You stop living to prove yourself to people, and you start living to reflect the one who created you. His love takes away the shame that used to hang over you like a dark cloud. It releases you from the performance trap where you are constantly trying to be good enough, strong enough, smart enough to earn love and approval. God's love says, "You are enough because I made you, and my Son paid the price for you." That truth becomes an anchor in the storms of life. When rejection comes, you don't break because you know you are accepted by the King of Kings. When failure comes, you don't lose your worth because your value is not built on what you achieve, but on whose you are. His love reshapes the way you see yourself, and that reshaping changes the way you move through life. It's a dangerous thing to let the wrong identity settle in your soul. The enemy knows that if he can convince you to see yourself through the lens of your past mistakes or current struggles, he can limit the impact of your future. But when God's love breaks through, it shatters those false lenses. It begins to open your eyes to the fact that you are not the sum of what happened to you, and you are not the mistakes you made. You are not bound to the cycles of your family's history, nor are you defined by the opinions of people who couldn't see your worth. The love of God interrupts generational patterns, personal insecurities, and self-limiting beliefs. It begins to set a new narrative over your life, one that aligns with His truth and His purpose. You start walking differently because you know you belong to Him. You start speaking differently because you know the power of life and death is in your tongue, and you choose to agree with what God has said about you rather than what the world has whispered. The process of identity transformation is not always instant, but it is always intentional. God is deliberate about breaking down the lies you've believed for years and replacing them with His truth. Sometimes He will take you through seasons that reveal the cracks in your self-image, not to condemn you, but to heal you. In those moments when you feel exposed, when you realize how deeply certain wounds have shaped the way you see yourself, His love steps in with both gentleness and strength. He doesn't just tell you to do better or be stronger. He says, "Let me show you who you really are. Let me restore what was stolen. Let me speak life into the places where you've been calling yourself dead." His love is patient with your process. It's consistent even when you are inconsistent. It doesn't abandon you when you relapse into old thinking. Instead, it calls you back to the truth. When your identity begins to change under the influence of God's love, it impacts every relationship you have. You no longer enter relationships out of desperation or fear of being alone because you understand that your worth isn't dependent on someone else's validation. You begin to set healthy boundaries because you realize you are valuable enough to protect. You stop tolerating mistreatment because you understand that being made in God's image means you deserve respect. You stop chasing counterfeit love because you've tasted the real thing in Him. His love doesn't just change the way you see yourself. It changes the way you allow others to treat you and the way you treat others in return. Love transforms you from being a person who constantly seeks affirmation to being a person who can give affirmation because you are already full. There's also a courage that comes when you know your identity in God. You stop playing small to make other people comfortable. You stop hiding your gifts and your calling because you are afraid of criticism or failure. When you are secure in His love, you can step into rooms where you feel unqualified, knowing that you are there by divine assignment. You can pursue dreams that feel bigger than your resources because you understand that your Father owns the cattle on 1,000 hills. You can endure seasons of obscurity without losing hope because you know that God's love hasn't left you, and if He has hidden you, it's because He's preparing you. This kind of security cannot be manufactured by self-help books or motivational speeches. It is the result of a deep, abiding relationship with the one who made you. The beautiful thing about God's love is that it doesn't wait for you to have it all together before it begins this transformation. While we were still in sin, Christ died for us. That means He saw us in our most broken state and still said, "You are worth it." When you truly believe that, you stop striving to earn His approval and start living in the overflow of it. The identity shift begins with acceptance, not self-acceptance based on flaws, but acceptance of the truth that you are already loved beyond measure by the Creator of the universe. That acceptance fuels obedience. You obey not because you are afraid of punishment, but because you trust His heart and His intentions toward you. Obedience becomes an act of love, and love becomes the force that propels you into everything He has planned for you. Over time, you will notice that as your identity changes, your prayers change. You stop praying from a place of insecurity, begging God to notice you, and start praying from a place of confidence, knowing you already have His attention. You start thanking Him for promises you haven't yet seen because you are convinced that His word over your life is unshakable. You start speaking declarations over your day, not because it's a trendy practice, but because you understand that as His child, your words carry authority. You begin to live as someone who knows they are seated in heavenly places with Christ Jesus, far above principalities and powers. Your spiritual posture shifts because your identity has been anchored in His love. Transformation begins in the heart before it manifests in the world, because God's work always starts on the inside. So many people want to see outward results, visible breakthroughs, and tangible blessings before they are willing to believe that something is changing. But in the kingdom of God, the process works in reverse. He plants the seed of change deep in the soil of your heart long before the fruit appears in your hands. You may not see anything on the surface at first, but that doesn't mean nothing is happening. In fact, the most critical part of transformation is the hidden work, the reshaping of your thoughts, the healing of your wounds, the renewal of your desires. God knows that if the heart isn't right, anything He gives you in the physical will be short-lived because the foundation to hold it isn't there yet. The heart is the control center of life. Out of it flow the issues of life, the motivations, the decisions, and the patterns that ultimately shape your future. When the heart is still holding bitterness, fear, unforgiveness, or insecurity, those things leak into every area of your existence, no matter how much you try to cover them up with outward success. That's why God goes after the heart first. His Spirit moves into those rooms you've locked, those corners you've avoided, those memories you've buried under layers of busyness and distraction. He begins to gently but firmly dismantle the lies, confront the wounds, and reframe the beliefs that have been shaping your life without you realizing it. He's not just making you feel better, he's making you whole, and wholeness always starts in the hidden place. When God begins to transform your heart, it's not always comfortable. In fact, it can be unsettling. You start to feel a pull away from things you used to tolerate easily. Conversations that once entertained you now grieve you. Environments that felt normal now feel toxic. It's not because you're becoming self-righteous, it's because your heart is changing its appetite. The things that once fed your brokenness no longer satisfy you. God is detoxing your heart from the poisons that kept you in cycles of dysfunction. He's not just removing the symptoms, he's going after the root. He's addressing the pride, the insecurity, the need for control, the craving for human validation, because he knows those are the barriers that keep you from living fully in his purpose. And here's the thing, while God is doing this inner work, the people around you might not understand what's happening. They might look at your life and think nothing has changed because the car is the same, the house is the same, the job is the same, the bank account is the same. But inside, you know you're not the same. Your reactions are different. Your perspective is shifting. The peace you have in situations that used to send you spiraling is proof that God's hand is on your heart. You're not moved by the same fears, not triggered by the same offenses, not chasing the same empty rewards. That inner shift is a sign that transformation is well underway, and in time the world will catch up to what God has already done in your spirit. Transformation in the heart also changes the way you see others. When God heals your heart, he softens it toward people you once could not forgive. He gives you compassion for those who hurt you, not to excuse what they did, but to release yourself from the prison of bitterness. You start to see people through the lens of grace rather than judgment. You become slower to speak, quicker to listen, and more deliberate in your actions because you understand that your words and deeds flow from the condition of your heart. This shift not only affects your personal relationships, but also the way you operate in your calling. Ministry, leadership, parenting, business, all of it is transformed when the heart behind it is pure and whole. God also uses the process of inner transformation to prepare you for responsibilities you can't see yet. There are blessings you've been praying for that require a healed and mature heart to handle well. If he gave them to you prematurely, they could crush you instead of bless you. He's not withholding them out of cruelty, but out of protection. A platform without character is a disaster waiting to happen. Influence without humility leads to pride. Wealth without wisdom leads to destruction. So God invests time in your heart, strengthening it, deepening your roots, so that when the weight of the blessing comes, you have the stability to carry it without losing your soul in the process. Part of heart transformation is learning to surrender control. We often want God to change our circumstances, but on our terms, according to our timeline. But God doesn't negotiate with our control issues. He teaches us to trust him. He will put us in situations where our only option is to lean on him fully. These seasons strip away the illusion of self-sufficiency and force us to anchor our faith in His character rather than in our own ability to manage outcomes. As this trust deepens, fear loses its grip and faith begins to govern your heart. When faith is in control, you stop reacting to life and start responding to God. Your prayers shift from "Lord, change this situation" to "Lord, change me in this situation." This kind of transformation can't be rushed. It's not a quick fix or a weekend retreat. It's the day-by-day work of the Holy Spirit reshaping you into the image of Christ. Sometimes you won't even notice the changes until you're faced with a situation that used to break you and realize it no longer has the same power over you. That's when you understand that the work God has been doing in your heart is real. And while the world celebrates instant results, God celebrates lasting change, the kind that starts in the heart and sustains you for a lifetime. The beautiful truth is that once the heart is transformed, the external will inevitably follow. You can't have a renewed mind, healed emotions, and a pure heart without it eventually spilling over into your actions, your relationships, and your circumstances. Your words will shift because your heart is no longer full of fear or anger. Your decisions will improve because you're no longer making them from a place of desperation or insecurity. Your relationships will strengthen because you're operating from love instead of neediness. The external fruit becomes a reflection of the internal work, and that's how you know the change is authentic. Walking in God's love positions you for a life of divine purpose because His love is not just an emotion or a comforting feeling. It is a guiding force that directs your steps into the exact places you were created to be. When you begin to truly walk in God's love, you are no longer navigating life by your own limited understanding or personal ambitions. You start to make decisions, form relationships, and pursue opportunities that align with His will, not just your desires. His love becomes the compass that keeps you from drifting into distractions and detours. You begin to realize that purpose is not something you stumble upon by accident. It is something you step into intentionally as you follow the leading of His love. You walk differently because you know you're being led, not by pressure or fear, but by the very heart of the one who knows the end from the beginning. The love of God has a way of clearing out the noise in your life. There are so many voices competing for your attention, voices of culture telling you what success should look like, voices of people placing their expectations on you, voices of your own fears, whispering limitations into your mind, but when you walk in God's love, His voice rises above them all. It is steady, reassuring, and unshakable. It doesn't push you into comparison or competition. It calls you into clarity. You stop chasing what looks good to others and start walking toward what is good for your soul. His love refocuses you on the assignments that matter and frees you from wasting time on paths that were never meant for you. Purpose without love can turn into striving, but purpose fueled by love becomes service, a willingness to be used by God for something greater than yourself. Walking in God's love also changes the way you endure challenges. Purpose is not always an easy road, and there will be seasons where the path feels uphill, where the doors you expected to open remain shut, and where the people you thought would walk with you turn away. But when your steps are anchored in His love, you are sustained in the valleys as much as you are celebrated on the mountaintops. His love reminds you that the difficulty is not a sign of His absence, but a part of the preparation. It teaches you to keep going when quitting feels like the easier option. It whispers to your spirit that you are still in His hands, even when nothing around you seems to make sense. You come to understand that divine purpose is not about comfort. It's about calling, and love is the power that keeps you moving toward it. God's love doesn't just direct you into purpose, it also equips you for it. Too often, people disqualify themselves from walking in what God has called them to do because they believe they lack the skills, resources, or connections. But walking in His love shifts your focus from what you don't have to the truth of who you have with you. The one who called you is the one who equips you. His love will open doors that your resume can't. It will connect you with people you could never have reached on your own. It will place you in positions where your only explanation for being there is that God put you there. And because you know you didn't get there by manipulation or human networking alone, you don't have to live in fear of losing it. If His love positioned you, His love can keep you. Another powerful thing about walking in God's love is that it keeps your heart pure in the middle of your assignment. Purpose can attract pride if the heart is not guarded. Success can make you forget who brought you there. Influence can tempt you to serve your own name instead of His kingdom. But when you are rooted in love, you remember why you are doing what you are doing, not for applause, not for status, not for recognition, but to reflect the love of God to others. His love keeps you humble enough to serve, even when you could demand to be served. It keeps you generous, even when you have every reason to hold back. It keeps you compassionate toward people, even when the pressures of life make it easier to become hardened. Love is the safeguard that keeps your purpose from being poisoned by ego. Walking in His love also makes you a vessel for impact in ways you could never predict. You begin to see your daily life as an opportunity to demonstrate His heart to others. The way you speak to a stranger, the way you respond to someone's pain, the way you handle moments of offense, these become moments where the love of God flows through you to touch someone else's life. Purpose is not always a grand stage or a global platform. Sometimes it's a quiet moment where God uses you to remind someone else that they are seen, valued, and loved. When your steps are guided by His love, you stop separating spiritual work from everyday life because you realize that every step can be a step of ministry when taken in love. There's also a supernatural alignment that happens when you walk in God's love. Doors open at the right time, opportunities find you instead of you chasing them, and resources come from unexpected places. This is not coincidence. It is the orchestration of a God who delights in ordering the steps of those who delight in Him. His love positions you in rooms where you can be a light, in conversations that lead to destiny connections, and in situations that stretch your faith for the next level of your calling. You no longer feel the need to manipulate circumstances or force outcomes because you trust that His love is guiding you exactly where you need to be. The journey of walking in His love also teaches you patience. Purpose is rarely revealed all at once. It unfolds over time. Some seasons feel like acceleration, while others feel like stillness. But when you know you are walking in His love, even the still seasons are not wasted. You understand that God is working in ways you cannot see, aligning details, preparing hearts, and building strength in you for what's ahead. You stop resenting the process and start embracing it, knowing that the same love that called you is the love that is keeping you in perfect timing. Most importantly, walking in God's love positions you to live a life that leaves a legacy. When your purpose is rooted in love, the impact you make is not limited to your lifetime. The seeds you plant in others continue to bear fruit long after you're gone. The kindness you show, the truth you speak, the encouragement you give, these things take root in people's hearts and influence generations. Love is the only force strong enough to outlast time, and when it fuels your purpose, your life becomes more than a series of accomplishments. It becomes a testimony of God's heart toward the world.